Welcome to Office Hours. This is the final Office Hours of our first season. We've been doing this since January, and we're 20 episodes in, which is quite something. I've been happy to see kind of the program evolving and morphing into what it currently is. And as we look at the next round of it, kicking off in the fall, one of the questions that I'll have for you as audience members is just what is the type of format that you'd like to see us try or work with coming up in the fall? We had one session a few weeks ago that I hadn't made proper plans. And so it was just kind of, it felt like one of those pancakes that falls out of the pan. And yet it ended up being a really enjoyable one because we just chatted, we just talked, and that was alerted. Someone said, I thought that's what you meant by office hours. So in that setting, I was like, all right, we'll take all of that feedback on board, and we can definitely continue to refine it along the way. We've had more of a structured approach. Today's going to be pretty loose, pretty open-ended, and we've got Chuck Marohn here to be able to chat about summer in a strong town is the theme that I used to hook you in. But Chuck is really just going to chat about this, that, and everything. And I will also cop up to the fact that he's not angry with me. He's just disappointed because I hadn't told him it was on his calendar. And he said just a little. And so do give him some grace because he had to squeeze this in the midst of when he should have been writing his.
In fairness, so one of the things that I do at Strong Towns is I actually write and I podcast. And if you've been following either the site or the podcast stream, you'll realize that it's been a while since I've not had an article on the Strong Towns site for, you write, Chuck? Exactly, Andrew. I think it's been like April since I've had an article on the site. Like, it's been really pathetic. That's because two things keep happening. One, I'm on the road. So this has been a really, really busy time of travel. But two, when I get back in, Wednesdays are my writing day. Like, I have right now through the rest of the day, I go like to a remote undisclosed location and I sit by myself and I write. I do have the book too. Yes. That is a nightmare in my back of my brain. But Norm keeps scheduling things for me during my writing time. And so, I had to have a little talk with Norm about moving office hours to a different day if we're going to reboot this program later on in the year.
Yeah. Although maybe positively, as to put a bit of a positive spin on it, the fact that we now have a bench of writers and content producers.
Oh, no, totally.
Days, to think of the fact that if Chuck wasn't writing, or if, a couple of other contributors, whereas now, as we continue to deepen the pool of talent that we have available, I think that is, one of the consequences of it is that we get a little bit less. So thank you for being the most willing guest on Office Hours today. I'm so grateful to have you. And I just want to throw it over to you. It's been 6 months. Out independent of Office Hours. I mean, we've been doing this together as a group, but what's been your impression of the last 6 months? And then maybe a follow-up is, what are you excited about over the summer months?
You mean at Strong Towns?
Yeah,
the
like
last
as an
6
update
months?
for members.
This has been the craziest 6 months we've ever had, like just in terms of like frenetic speed, right? We adopted our new strategic plan last year, and then we started kicking off new programs in that plan this year. The first half of the year included kicking off the Key Action Lab, the Crash Analysis Studio, and the National Gathering. Andrew, who's on this call, said, this is going to be really hard. And I'm like, oh, no, it's not going to be hard. And like, oh my gosh, it's been so hard. All three of these things are like full contact sports. The Community Action Lab, we've got Edward Erfurt and Tony Harris running that program. We're hiring someone else to do writing for that program. That became apparent like after 2 months that we really needed that. So fill in the blank. The last 3 months has been me doing the writing part, trying to keep that program going and going well. We just got back from Lake County, Florida last week. And the week before that, we were in Medicine Hat in Alberta, Canada. Those are 2 of our 4 community action labs. And I had an idea of like, here's the amount of change that we'll see on the ground. And then we'll be able to write about that and share it with other people. We're seeing like ridiculous amounts of things shift in these places in ways greater than I ever anticipated. And so it has been on one hand more painful because it has been a bigger shift. But on the other hand, it's been like really, really rewarding. And I think in both of those places, we've started like a ball rolling down the hill that nobody can stop. A little scary, right, Norm? Like a little scary. In the crash analysis studio, we just wanted to do the goal the first 6 months of the year was just to do this competently and like show people that we could do it. We already have a state, and I can, you're recording this, so can I say this amongst friends? Yeah. Craziest 6 months I've ever had here, Norm. And we're about to add, the 20th person here on the team, which, if you had told me that, yeah, Andrew's like, oh my gosh, if you had told us that even like 3 years ago, we would have said that's insane. Like there's no way. But we need a 20th person because we have so much stuff going on.
I will actually say what's more emblematic of how big of a change that is that for the first 8 years as an organization, every hire,
you were involved in
every single hire was like this very deep, like, look at the budget. Can we possibly do this? What are we going to get? Should we do this role versus that role? What exactly will their job be? Like, are we sure we can find someone? Like our budget isn't very high. And now it's just like, every quarter Chuck's like, oh yeah, I hired 2 more people for this and that. And it's like, cool, no worries. So that has, over the span of the last 2 years, that's become just, there's a different operating environment, which is really awesome.
Every year, really except one, and it was the one where our database blew up, which is really a really weird thing. Every year, our membership projection has been aggressive to the point where the board has gone, really, like that's where we're going to be. And then we've always beaten it. The only year we didn't beat it was the one year where, like I said, our database just like broke and like a whole bunch of people didn't get notifications, and it was just a nightmare. And in that year we broke even, but we didn't beat it, right? This year we planned a more aggressive up than in past years, and we are way ahead of that. And the interesting thing is that if we beat our membership projection by 20% 5 years ago, it was great. Like it was really good to be. When we beat it by 5% or 10% today, it's like a whole nother staff person. Like that, when you get to the size that our membership is at right now and you beat it by that, you're actually talking about enough capacity to hire someone. And so, I remember back to the early days of membership, we were like, become a member because this is how we grow this movement and build up our capacity to be able to help do things. And it wasn't like we were not being true about that. We were being very true, but it took a lot of members to add like the next thing. Now it takes one good member drive for us to be able to say, that local conversation thing we got going on, we're going to send John on the road. We've got a bigger budget now for travel than we planned on. And so all these places that are kind of in the nascent phase, we're going to bump them up and get them really moving. It allows us to like flow resources around to these places that need it in a way that we could not do even 3 or 4 years ago. So, yeah.
And I think at this point, we're seeing quite clearly that our members are not just contributors or supporters of a movement, but they're participants in the whole thing, and really so critical to it, because one of the amazing things about continuing to see us creep ever closer to 5,000 members is that means there are 5,000 people that have arisen out of the mass of many others that are member adjacent, really interested in this type of stuff, and they're finding that, hey, I know somebody in that neighborhood, I'm going to connect them to you. And when John and I do the new member orientation sessions, it's so amazing to realize like there's connections happening all the time. And that has been something pretty remarkable to see. Yeah, there's our local conversations group at the moment.
So this map, when we first put together this map, it had 100 things on it. And when John took over the local conversations program, I was like, pare this down to the ones that are really legit there. And I want to say it was like less than 20. It was very few. It's now 140. And the number that blew my mind was we have over 700 groups in the process of forming right now. So not all of them will make it through, but if like 1 out of 10 makes it through, which I think it'll be much, much higher than that, we're on schedule to double these local conversations again. And these are groups with multiple people meeting regularly in a place, like working to implement Strong Towns ideas in their place. Mm-hmm. That program keeps me up at night. And it keeps me up at night because I'm like, how do we, I feel like my role right now is to make sure that no energy gets wasted. So how do we keep, if we've got people meeting in a place, how do we help them make that energy they're expending as productive as possible so that, you know, what they're doing continues to build on itself and then results in something meaningful. Mm-hmm. And doing that with 50 local conversations was a challenge. Doing it with 150 is like, okay, I feel like we're reaching the extent of like what we can do. Then they say, well, there's 700 of them in process of forming. And I start to have heart palpitations and go, what in the heck are we doing? Like, this is just, right, again, another level. Sharon?
Well, I just like one of the Strong Towns principles is to entrust development to people working from the bottom up. If the local conversations get too many, I mean, you want to be careful about your own branding on some level, but on another hand, that's where you also just have to trust, I guess, the chaos.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's certainly, I mean, I'm with you. And I think that's the general overall philosophy. There's also, you know, just from a human psychology standpoint, there's the notion of priming and how do we give people stuff to work on? How do we help them communicate these ideas most effectively? You know, one of the things that I'm very sensitive to right now personally, and I've communicated this to Norm and John, and I think we're going to have to develop a way to deal with this before the end of the year. Election years are always crazy. They're always nutty. And you all know that just out there, but I'm saying from a Strong Town standpoint, election years are really crazy because we can publish something like, oh, we should have, you know, neighborhoods that are more walkable, or we should be more fiscally prudent. And if we publish both of those things in the same article, we will have nuts from the right and nuts from the left coming after us in ways that are just like, what just happened? Like we said the same thing today we said yesterday, and now all of a sudden we're like the vortex of insanity. Our local conversations are going to experience that for the first time now. Mm-hmm. What it is like to have this dialogue going on in a presidential year. And we've learned a lot about how to communicate our ideas in this kind of tumult. And we need to train them, or at least get them primed and ready for what that's going to look like and how to avoid like the easy pitfalls of communicating, you know, during an election year. But
I just, first of all, I've started through
Sharon.
the course. Oh, sorry. I've started through the course, and you've given, I don't remember which lesson I'm on, but you've raised some points that are very helpful already. And I also think that probably kind of the people that are attracted to Strong Towns have already been interested in caring about a lot of issues that they're kind of are on. So they may not be new to conflict.
Right. No, totally. No doubt.
So,
Danny, you had something? Am I taking over your meeting, Norm? Because Danny unmuted. I'm like, I want to hear from him. Okay.
Half a sec. Well, I was going to say, yeah, I did the meetings too. And I think that part of this, you know, grassroots bottom up thing is it's like people aren't as, I don't know, I don't want to say ignoring like the federal elections and stuff is sort of like a good approach, but it's definitely like not what we're interested in kind of across the board from my understanding.
Yeah. Well, we talk about it in terms of sensitivities. So most people, this is probably unfair. Andrew, push back on this if you think I feel like a lot of America today, people who are involved, their sensitivities are like 90% federal, 10% local, right? And So we're not saying don't have any sensitivity to what's going on in Washington, DC, but like if you can recalibrate that instead of being 90-10 to be, 20-80, like really focus on the local, you're still like informed, you're still involved, you're still an educated voter, but you're not like sitting there retweeting, national talking points. You're actually working in your place in a way that's more meaningful and more productive.
What's difficult here is that I think people who are particularly well informed about the workings of government in the US are aware. But by design, our system is your impact to you as a person, smallest by far the federal, then the state, then the local. And in some cases, then your HOA or your like pseudo government layers that are even smaller and more intense, right? Your condo board, right? But TV market size, the biggest market is the federal market, and each of those successive markets. So you can't make money talking about the condo board news. So we have an entire entertainment industry in this country that like gets people hooked on the reality TV show of, the Squad versus Ron DeSantis. And this is where people the problem with that is not that like these things aren't like somewhat logical, they don't somewhat exist. It's that most people who are a little interested mistakenly feel like getting hooked on the reality TV show is somehow they're doing their civic duty and like being involved in the process. And this is unfortunate because if they would take the same energy and passion and apply it to showing up to city council meetings, they would have tremendous impact. They don't realize this. I was shocked when I lived in Houston as a 23-year-old kid. I started showing up to city council meetings and I was one of like 20 people in the audience of a city of millions. And I'm like, comment, I don't think we should do this. And people are like, oh, interesting. Why not? And I'm like, holy shit, the mayor of Houston is asking me why I think this, but people perceive that every level of government is as inaccessible as the White House. And it's so false. So I don't know, maybe this comes up every now and then inside of Strong Towns, but maybe we should think again. Maybe it's a good time for us to revisit. Is there an opportunity for us to get more people to just care about showing up locally? I mean, we talk about it a lot, but I don't know if there's anything like else we could come up with or anything else we could do to like help move that along.
Yeah.
But say, Chuck, I want to ask you a question where in summertime, there's kind of dueling impulses. On the one hand, you want to just do your work and then be able to relax and enjoy family time or enjoy time with friends, enjoy, getting away to other places, especially if you're in Brainerd. But on the other hand, there may be also the recognition that summer is a great time to get people together. Like summer can be a time for activism. Do you have any thoughts on like, what does a Strong Town summer actually look like? And maybe is there anything about, the way that we approach building complete communities that, or stronger communities that would weigh in on that?
Well, summer is the greatest time to be in Brainerd. If we want to talk specifically, right? Like, it's not 25, 30 below. There's not snow on the ground. It's beautiful outside. I go back to like an article that Andrew wrote a long time ago about, it was in response to like, where do you get started? And I think the article was like, throw a block party or invite your neighbor over for dinner or something like that. And it's amazing because we just had my oldest graduate from high school. And so when you do something like that, you throw a little party, and it's not just a family party. It's family. It's people who know her and have worked with her. It's teachers and other things, coworkers, that kind of thing. But then it's also like the neighborhood. And it was astounding how many people from the neighborhood that I know and see and showed up, and how often it came up like, we should have a block party. We should have a block party. Will you start a block party? Can we do a block party here? I feel like it's like the base, like it's the first thing. It's like the easiest thing to do. And to me, for places that are, especially places that are just nascent, like we're just getting started, having people come over and not even having like an agenda to be like, here's 5 things we should talk about. If you get a bunch of people from the neighborhood together in a room, you know what they're going to talk about? They're going to talk about the neighborhood. And that's like a great place to get started, is just to say, let's do this. Bring your own drink. I'll throw some hot dogs on the grill or whatever it is. Just come on over. Let's have a couple hours in the evening on a Thursday or whatever it is. And let's all just get to know each other a little bit, in a way where if I stop by a week from now or a month from now or 2 months from now and say, hey, did you know about this thing in the park? Did you know about this thing at City Hall? Here's this thing we're doing. I'm not only not a stranger, but I'm actually an acquaintance. And that's like 90% of the burden of like mobilizing people, is getting beyond I'm not just a stranger, but I'm gonna, into the acquaintance phase. Cause then, they can say no, like I'm busy that night, I got this going on. And they can say yes, like, or they'll tell you like, here's what else. That acquaintance stage is a really important one to get to. So throw a block party. We're going to do it.
Mhm. Yeah, we're hoping to as well. And I dropped a couple article links in the chat as well, of just suggestions from Emma Durand Wood, who writes about that a number of times. An article that I wrote where for me, it was just a matter of like realizing once I hit print, like it would be a foolish thing to waste the paper. So I may as well go and deliver these. And then we had an amazing outcome. There's a question by Alex. Do you want to jump in, Alex?
Alex.
No, I think one, I wanted to congratulate everybody on the national gathering. I had been a CNU member, but that was really the reason why I came this year, was
Thank
because
you.
these two organizations came together. And I felt like, I know I've told some of your staff since then, Chuck, but I felt like it was the old days of CNU, like not so heavy and stuff. It was very energetic. And so I felt like it lifted everybody in the entire conference after even.
Thank you.
My other,
Andrew and I would appreciate that, especially because we long for the old days of CNU, right?
yeah. And a little bit of tactical urbanism is kind of that niche. It's kind of like on the edge. We're always kind of like skirting the edge of legal and not legal, risky and not risky, or, but always pushing the envelope. And you got to
Yeah.
push the envelope forward. You're either going forward or backwards. I guess one thing I was going to say about elections and all, I would maybe almost think of this as an opportunity. And I say that as we have two parties in our country, and we know people, 200, 300 million people can't be put in two categories. That's absurd.
Right.
You're an independent voice. There really isn't, newspapers or whatever, but AI, it's so weird nowadays. But I think, thinking of those early days of CNU too, if you got to the bare root of your issues, like I love when you guys just do two pictures and you say, what do you like, A or B? Like you really just put it to people as so simplistic, and that way it could be a message that can be heard on a left or a right or a middle or a Jewish or a black or a white or a whatever. I think it may be an opportunity to just really core in and really focus and it's almost like we don't have the days of a black and white movie with mimes or no talking. It would almost be refreshing in election time to have no talking and just put two images and say, do you like this? And maybe just run it like a it would almost be like a Survey Monkey. It'd be like, hey, Facebook, check up or down. You like this picture or you don't? Or you like A or B? And then at the end of the day, you just take those results. I think it would be interesting.
That would be.
So
Mm-hmm.
just a thought.
Mm-hmm. No, I appreciate that. Sharon, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Malcolm Gladwell did an interesting piece a couple years ago on his Revisionist History podcast about, I think he called it Powerball, and the idea of people who are willing to try to do the job, just put your name in a hat and they drew numbers, or and there's a lottery. Mm-hmm. It was at the level of a student council, but it begs the question, you had people who did a really good job who would have been terrible at campaigning, but they're really good at the job that need to be done.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thought.
Yeah. I remember reading that as utterly fascinating.
Chuck, a question from Elliot. He said, how have the shifts within the strong towns over the past 6 months been bigger than anticipated, and how will we better plan for greater success? So he's pumping you for more details.
Is this is Elliot
Kelly, yeah, from Toronto.
Okay, not. Oh, I see. Hi, Elliot.
Actually, originally from Minneapolis.
No, seriously?
Yeah, all four corners. I used to live on Nicollet Island.
Oh, wow. So you moved south to Toronto.
That's true.
Yeah. So elaborate on what you're getting at, because I'm happy to talk a lot about what we're doing internally.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about this from my perspective as a leader in the local conversation group here in Toronto. That you know, it's a handful. It's like 6 people right now, but John tells us there's like hundreds of people in the wings, and I'm thinking, oh boy, that's a lot bigger than any organization that I've ever worked with. But and it became apparent really quick after our first small group meeting that messaging and method are critical to getting the right outcomes. And like, I guess because of the algorithm and what it feeds me, the YouTube gives me all this stuff about like, oh, and like this strodes are bad and that stuff's bad, but I'm not into that. And I guess I'm done with it because I know there's enough info out there. And so I'm just curious, like, how can I manage the growth? How can I connect using the right messaging to folks so that our group is open and it's invitational and welcoming and competent. So because there's with growth there requires a scaling level of competence. So that's kind of where the question is pointed.
No, you're asking the questions that we're asking right now and struggling with. We have this internal metric that we use to judge our content, and it has 3 different kind of bars you have to cross to be good content for us. The first one is this basically competent enough, or competence is the wrong word. Is this friendly enough where a politician could share it without reservation? And if you think of like a politician communicating to a broad audience, what you don't want to do is you don't want to have snarky, nasty stuff. You don't want to have this like aura of, can I trust these people? The stuff we produce has got to be trustworthy enough and clear enough where a politician, someone running for mayor or city council or a different level of government will say, I can share this and I'm not worried that someone's going to pull some nasty thing out of the Strong Downs feed and say, are you supporting this too? That kind of thing. The second layer then, the second kind of level for our content is that we say, is it competent enough, technically proficient enough? Not to where like a technical person is going to, oh, this is great, but something where they're going to read it and they're not going to outright reject it because it's ridiculous. So like years ago, I remember there were all these articles about solar panel roads. And as an engineer, like I looked at that and I'm like, that's the dumbest, like whoever's publishing these articles doesn't know anything about wheel ruts or, like just the things that happen to a road when you drive a semi down it. Like this is, this is stupid. Like whatever site runs this doesn't know what they're talking about. And so for us, it's like, we don't necessarily have to have like the city engineers say, I fully agree. But when they read it, they can't say, this is clearly not credible because these people don't, like if they knew anything about this, they wouldn't publish something so dumb. The third framework then, the third bar to cross is to say, is it engaging to people? Like for people who are not elected and not technical professionals, will they find this content dry and like, whatever, or will it really capture them and they find it engaging? And that's the part where it takes talent, it takes writing, it takes capacity to do. When we think of that in our content stream, I feel like we've devoted a lot of time and energy to getting the content part of our stuff right. So when people ask me questions like the one you just asked, Elliot, I was like, we have this massive library of stuff that you can share with people. Do that. Like we've made like very little friction in doing that. But I think the question that we've got, and the thing that we're asking ourselves internally now, and I think the thing we need to spend time on is, if we're going to have 100, 200, 700 plus local conversations, we have to make it so that the people leading those local conversations can do the same thing with their communications that we do, like to a broad audience. We have to help them have that same process we use to evaluate, like, does our communication do these three things? And then actually have, we've talked about having almost like templates set up where people can plug and play stuff, like drop things in and use them as conversation starters or as ways to, delve into things at a local level. Michelle Duran Wood is not a replicable person. Norm, I don't know if you agree with that or not. Push back if you don't. But like, I look at the stuff he does in Winnipeg and the conversation he pushed forth in Winnipeg, and it's astounding. If we have to develop a Michelle Duran Wood in every city, I think we'll grind to a halt. So the thing becomes like, how do we get people to be able to communicate at the level of nuance and detail that Michelle Duran Wood does, but in a way that has less of a burden to be this savant? And Elliot, quite frankly, I don't think we've solved that one yet. It's like one of the top of the agenda things for local conversations to be working on. I gave Norm a list of 11 questions I've got for the program, and we're still working through them. And that was like number 1 or 2.
Can I make a?
Yeah, please. I'd love your feedback.
This is,
I'd love your
this is
insight.
the feedback that I have. So, and I'm gonna quote a Catholic Canadian in the media space. His name is Marshall McLuhan, and his like main idea is that the medium is the message. So
yes.
the medium through which we communicate is the message that we're communicating. And I would argue that if we will have success at a local level, that it will not be self-similar or like fractally similar to the national messaging, like as it would be on the blog, and that in its
Amen.
medium, it's where we have different goals, right? Because like you just said, levels 1, 2, 3. This is a very broad application. But at the local level, we're the feet on the ground. We're the bottom up. We're like neighbor, like, and so the messaging is different, and the means are different, right? Because you can't put a handshake or like a shared banana bread on the website, but it works very effectively to my neighbor next door. And so that's kind of what I'm really curious about. I've been speaking to local politicians and developers here in Toronto, and I'm connecting, just like experiencing what are the groups that are out there. And so I think that if anything, that what I'm especially interested in is the method that we can use in a sense, just to find the other groups that are already doing this. I mean, it's not a secret that we got to change stuff, but as a conversation group, I see us as a catalyst, actually are connecting. It's like the glue fitting everything together, and to activate us in celebration, right? To enjoy first, and to show that it's joyful. And in so doing, it is self-similar to your national messaging, which is inoculated in a way against like extremists, because it's just plain common sense. And everyone likes a good neighborhood, and everyone likes fiscal responsibility. So I think in that's how I think it might be successfully carried out.
I could not agree with you more. And I feel like, the way we've approached this thus far is to start with the places that are doing this well and trying to learn from them and say, okay, what this is working really, really well in Sioux Falls. What are you doing in Sioux Falls? And how does that translate to Toronto? And I programmatically, I think of this as like a buffet in a sense. For us, there's certain things that you're going to have at a buffet. You need a tray, you need a plate, you need a fork and spoon. Like we can give everybody those things, right? You need a table to sit down at. But then like all the different ingredients, you need to be able to like pick out of different bins what is going to work for you and then mash them together in the way that works on the ground. I think the two things that we need to we're doing now that I think we need to get better at. The one is we're plucking these stories from places that are doing this well, and we're sharing them out. But I think we need to do more of that. The second thing is that we need to get in a place where we can give better feedback to people as they're like going forward. So like, I would like to be able to be in a position where Elliot, you said, all right, we've got this thing we're doing next week, and here's what I put together for this, and here's what I'm working on. Like, give me like 10 minutes of feedback on this. And I'd like to be able to have the bandwidth where like we could do that, or we could connect you with somebody who could do that, who's kind of been there and done that. And then when you did it, I'd like to be able to take it and make a case study out of it and say, here's what Elliot did in Toronto. This may or may not work for you, but here's one way to think about this. And we actually have the bandwidth for that. We're kind of, I think, internally talking about what's the best way to make that happen. Right, Norm? I'm pushing you on that one all the time.
Yeah, and there's individual capacity to lead a group well without sidetracking it down one path or the other. And there's a certain sense that Strong Towns is calling on communities to act with restraint, not only restraint, but like there's a certain call to that. And I think it helps then when groups themselves practice that first. If there's a perception, my city's a runaway train, you're not just a cranky brake, you're actually saying, hey, there's a better way to run a system, but doing so without the arrogance that can easily slip in. And so there's a certain alarm, I think, within our efforts to try to help local conversation leaders. And maybe this reflects more broadly just for members and everyone, is you have a small percentage that are loud, that are flipping off drivers when they're getting cut off as a pedestrian and happily posting that to their social media pages. And we're like, oh boy, there's a reputation problem there. There's a method problem. There's a lack of restraint. And we live in a culture that is typified by a widespread lack of restraint right now in terms of our public discourse and the things that people are willing to say publicly. At the same time, the far larger group is grappling with imposter syndrome or feeling like, oh, I don't know, like this feels like a bit of a lift. I want to do it. I love to do it. But kind of like, well, maybe a segment within that is the ever-present online activist that needs to be encouraged to just take it offline. To bring it into the streets, to make that banana bread actually and deliver it, rather than just talking a good game on Twitter or on other places. So it's interesting to kind of think through the different psyches of our aspiring leaders, and we have a pretty good cross section already. I won't tell any of the folks on this call who we think you are, but I think you already know who you are, just in terms of the way in which you represent Strong Towns within your community, but really represent the needs within the community as you go along. And yeah, to Danny's point, like optics are really important. And for Elliot, the buffet of different materials, that's definitely something that we're pushing for. We're trying to work on that to get that streamlined internally.
I don't know if you all have seen the changes to our social streams over the past 6 months. But it's been tremendous, night and day. And, part of this is in response to what the platforms themselves have done. All of the platforms have, ever since we started dabbling in this space, the platforms have all wanted you to stay on the platform. and they would always like favor things that kept people on the platform, but they also wanted to drive engagement. And they were willing to sacrifice people clicking on links and going off the platform if it was interesting content and engaging content, and if you would come back to the platform to get stuff. So we had a strategy we developed in like 2014, 2015 that really leaned into that. That strategy slowed down in terms of how well it worked around the pandemic. The 2020 election, everything went off the rails, and it went off the rails because everything went off the rails. I mean, the platforms themselves didn't know what they were doing. They were having all these, misinformation. Like, Congress was looking at this. Were they being abused? All these things started to creep into when we would try to run an ad to put our message in front of people. Made it like way more difficult. We spent last year kind of rethinking this approach and retooling, and ultimately came up to we wound up hiring a marketing firm, and it was actually got connected to a guy who we did the Strong Towns thing. We said, we're struggling with this. Who's doing it well? And we went out and we followed a bunch of people we thought were doing it well. And there was a guy named Nathan Alabach who we thought was communicating our message independently really well. And I got a hold of him to see if we could partner with him or offer him a job or, bring him in on board. And he said, well, I work for this ad agency. That's my family's ad agency. Would you guys be interested in working with us? And we've been working with them since December. If you watch our stuff on social, it has become much more platform friendly. And because of that, much more broadly, our engagements are way up, our numbers are way up. The social stuff is kind of going through the roof. It's leading to less direct traffic on our site, but more like indirect traffic and more people getting kind of exposed to our stuff. The thing that we've been talking about with local conversations is a lot of the way that people want to organize or want to communicate or want to share message is not Michelle Duran would write a blog. That would be all if everybody had like their own blog and they were writing things, but a lot of it is like, we're out, I'm going to take this picture, I'm going to write a little thing about it. I'm going to be out here, I'm going to share a meme, or I'm going to do what have you. And depending on like the age of the people in the group too, they have very different platform preferences. And so what we've been trying to do is develop this kind of buffet of communication tools that people can be inspired by and then pick and choose from to share on their own platforms in their own way. The next step for this is actually part of this onboarding and training process. How do we help people to identify the platform that's going to work best for them? And then how do we help them populate that with an ongoing engagement approach that's, in a sense, like pre-vetted, but then also like can be iterated on. So we've got this thing, Strong Towns ran, we can run it. We can also run like our own version of it. We can change the text in it to be more localized. We can talk about the specific park in our neighborhood or the specific road or what have you. So the idea is to, broaden that out and then get our people, as we onboard them in local conversations, connected to that stuff so they can use it kind of seamlessly on the platform of their choice. Right, Norm? Are we on the same page?
Absolutely. I'm going to drop a quick note in that we're just 6 members away from 4,600 members. And so if you know anyone who is, you should nudge, definitely encourage them because we're getting close, even another great milestone. But let's take maybe one more question. I don't know if there's anybody that wants to jump in. It can be on this or just a chance to ask an unrelated question. Feel free. I know I'm speaking a little bit strangely because I have cherry pits in my cheek. I'm like a squirrel.
Andrew, you have something you want to add to that?
I have a super small question, which is for Norm. When are we resuming office hours?
Yeah, so we'll tool up in early September and then run basically till December. So September to December, and then we'll take a break for the December break that we take as staff. and then we'll go back. Oh, and it won't be on Wednesdays. I've been told from above that it will not be on Wednesdays, but we will find it'll still be in the noon hours time slot, probably on a Thursday. And in fact, that'll probably be helpful because as I'm traveling more, it's proven to be a bit of a gap there as well. So that's the plan. Again, I will send out a survey to everybody that had registered for Strong Towns office hours over the course of this season. And so that's been a big number. I think we're well over 200, 300 people. And then we've had hundreds of views on YouTube as well, which has been great to see people actually making use of the content. So Fridays, locomotive. Oh, that's true. We may have to, probably during the time that locomotive sessions are running, it's just going to be like a very basic hangout, because I don't want to do counter programming to what locomotive sessions are, which are bringing in a Strong Town staff person and a local or a subject matter expert and having them talk together about how to run for office as a local Strong Towns candidate or whatever the new versions will be. I think the idea is to theme them around our core campaigns, the 5 core campaigns. And locomotive will start in the fall. I don't know exactly what the particular date, but it'll be 10 weeks of locomotive sessions. So, and that'll be recorded, and that'll be much better quality than this sideshow. But this has been great. We've got just a bit of time. I don't know if anybody has a last question or actually over to you, Andrew. I want to ask. So for those that are newer, Andrew's our board chair and somebody that thinks deeply and passionately about the broader work of cultivating a movement and ensuring that it has not just feet, but also momentum. And so do you want to talk just what have you seen in the last 6 months or however long, whatever time frame, and then what are you looking ahead to?
Okay, before I answer that, I was going to say one thing. This is a funny riff off of Chuck's, like allowing this sort of like many different media platforms and like, letting people go to the place that fits for them. I just wanted to say thank you for putting this program together on Zoom, because my life is like 6 hours a day on Zoom. And while I don't really want like more hours a day on Zoom, this is just incredibly easy for me to like fit into the rest of my life because I'm already just sitting here doing Zoom calls all day anyway. So I just really value that. It's nice to just be able to connect with Strong Towns in the place I'm already hanging out. So for some definition of hanging out. Things I have seen in the last 6 months and I just feel like our staff capacity has turned a corner in a major way. And it's been more like the last 18 months, not so much the last 6, but like the fruit of that are beginning to be really visible. And actually maybe the last 6 months, because Ed's starting in Community Action Lab, like that has added a level of like depth to our thought leadership. We all look up to Chuck and admire his leadership in this area, but we've always needed Strong Towns to have like more anchors. And Daniel has like matured and grown into that role. Rachel has matured and grown into that role. Like adding Ed as another anchor has been really valuable, I think. I think what I'm looking forward to is the rate of progress we're making on membership creates really exciting new possibilities for the organization. So it's a linear projection is like things are better than they were. And as Chuck said, like with scale comes each new member drive maybe means one more staff person or one more like well-funded program. And that is exciting. But what's more exciting is the rate of change. And that we were previously doing a little better every member drive. Now we're doing a lot better every member drive. Can we keep doing a lot better every member drive for like 5 or 10 member drives in a row? That's much more exciting. Mm-hmm. I said this to you like spontaneously on our call yesterday, but I was thinking about it more. I'm a verbal processor, so a lot of my ideas occur to me as I say them, which is a strange experience sometimes. This was one of those. I said this thing to you, and then I thought about it later and thought it actually was kind of profound, which is, I feel like the Strong Town story has at least 3 chapters in it, and we're in chapter 2. And chapter 1 was, can we exist? Like, can we survive? And chapter 2 is the chapter in which we discover that we have power, and how to use it. And chapter 3 will be how we use our power to change the world. And there probably could be more, and maybe in 5 years we'll laugh about what a silly metaphor this was. But I think it's apt. I think we're going through a phase shift. I also mentioned to you we've previously we survived by having a scarcity mindset, but we're beginning to be an organization that has capacity and abundance, and that calls for different strategies and different techniques and approaches. And all of that transition is all stuff we're like learning right now. So in my mind, I'm kind of attaching to this, like, this is chapter 2, where we learn how to be, we survived long enough to become like increasingly large and powerful. And now we're like learning how to be a powerful organization. And I think that's pretty cool. And I have no predictions at all for where it will go, but except for that, you know, one day there will be no more suburbs. No, just kidding. Was that recorded? We should maybe erase that part of the recording. But
the Ministry of Magic will be sending their
yeah, yeah, we'll just undo. We'll invent the time machine. We'll roll it. No, there will always be suburbs. But yeah, I don't know where it will go. But I mean, that's kind of fun though too. The journey has been the kind of the point, I think, for a lot of this anyway. So
Well,
I don't know
I
how
just,
well that
I mean,
answered the question, but
I remember Andrew. I mean, you and I were here in the days, think not only do we have a scarcity mentality, but we had this, like, we were building something. I met with someone today who was like, how did Strong Towns get so successful? And I'm like, we starved for like 5 years.
yeah.
You know, like literally it's very weird to be in this position. But I mean, in the last year, the problem we've always had is saying no to stuff, but the stuff we're saying no to now is insane. I mean, we look, the Department of Defense contact us and they're like, we have this like $50 million program for redesigning this. And, you know, can you guys help with that? And I'm like, no, like I get you, but like working on military bases would be really cool. And I'm sure it would be lucrative, but like, it's really not part of our core programs and it doesn't really scale. And like, it's not what we're here on earth to do. You know, so things like that. I mean, I'll say that I think some of you have gotten this story, but I mean, last year we had a philanthropist through one of his the person who works for him doing his philanthropy work contact us and say, answer us 3 questions. What do you guys do? What impact does it have? And what would you do with more money? And we answered him, we got back to him. And the result was, you know, over $600,000 grant to do the crash analysis studio. That would never, I mean, go back 2 years, that would have been our entire budget. So that like amount of money would have been insane. But I mean, go back 2 years and that we would not have been able to answer that question. We would not have been able to do that. So I agree with Andrew, like we're in this phase shift now where we can credibly say we can do big things that are going to matter and you can give us 7 figures and it will matter. We will not be overwhelmed. We will not squander this. We will not waste it. And the interesting thing for us is that we're actually at a point now where it is deciding what of those things that matter are we going to focus our energy on. And that's actually, I mean, Andrew, the biggest discussions you and I have had over the last 6 months have been, here's the 10 things you're bringing me. Which 5 of these are you not going to do?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy.
I have a hard stop at the hour, but just wanted to say thank you to everyone for joining. It's so cool to get to have these calls and have just a small group of really invested people join us. So much of what we do is one way. And I mean, like we know people see it and react to it, but it's just really cool to just be live with some of you each week. And Norm, thanks for organizing and making all these happen. Yeah,
I'm glad to. And I guess for those that are watching on YouTube, this has been an Under the Hood episode or a See How the Sausage is Made episode. And I kind of morphed into that and I'm glad it did because I actually said, or I was thinking about it, it could be like a behind the curtain, but I really believe, and I think as an organization, we are doing everything we can to make sure there's not a curtain, that the members know and see and kind of observe the growth of it. I think even sometimes as hopefully a model for other small organizations to emerge in a similar way. But for you as a member to truly feel valued and part of this whole process, because without it, without the support of those early members and now, you know, our most recent members, we wouldn't have what we've got going on. So, yeah, let's last word to you, Chuck, and then I'll stop the recording.
Well, I can go for hours, Norm, because I don't need to write anything or do anything else. No, when we talked about doing the office hours thing, I was like, this would be awesome. This would be fantastic. And I'm glad we've done it. I know it's been helpful and we've gotten a lot of good feedback on it. I do like the idea of morphing this as we go into the fall to have a lot more like unstructured, you know, even getting people, even doing breakout rooms and chatting would be cool. But thank you.
Yeah.
It's nice to, Andrew said we don't get our communication's often one way. He's on the board. It is often one way when you're on the board. We get a lot of two-way feedback. And I mean, especially when I'm out speaking to groups and doing that. And I can tell you, as the guy who, you know, drove hours and had 2 people show up, you know, back in 2011, 2012, there's no place we go now today where there's not lots and lots and lots of people who are ready to roll up their sleeves and do this. So we're all kind of on the edge of a wave, and it's really fantastic to be here with all of you doing that.